is one of the main dollar donors, so I wish they could see what we're doing here, but with their help, we've decided to do our first of a few lectures this year based on play. And this is the role of play, and we've brought in maybe, I think, one of the best for play space, education-based, education with children and working with what makes an active mind healthy. I'm going to invite Rosan Bosch to speak with us for the rest of the hour, and we'll have some Q&A afterwards, but please know that you can put something in the chat and we'll follow up with that as the event is going on. So with that, I'm going to give Rosan the microphone, if I may.
Thank you, Susan. That's me. It's more like mute, unmute in these times, but I'm delighted to be here, and I'm delighted to speak to all of you, although I'm on the other side of the earth, and for me it's actually quite late in the evening, but still, I'm happy that we're gonna have a small hour together here to play, and I hope that I can inspire you, and I hope that I can give you some playful mindset. So I'm just going to go to share my screen now. So I have prepared a little presentation for us. And I would like to share with you my thoughts on how to design for playfulness. So as Susan said, my name is Rosan Bosch, and I'm actually the founder and creative director of Rosan Bosch Studio, a design agency in Copenhagen. We work all over the world. And for many years now, I have created together with my team all kind of different, what we call playful learning landscapes. This is both children and adults. What they have in common is that they are environments, what we call, that maximize in a way the human potential to develop and to learn. Now, this is because we don't, we do design physical things, we do create, kind of environments physically, but in a way, what we really focus on, the objective of what we do is about the people. Now, doing so, a design process is different. And why are we doing so? It's because we believe that, well, we're not only born with a mind, we are born with a body. And we believe that this physical environment, by playing with it, by changing it, by, kind of inspiring you, talking to your senses, creating an environment that maybe makes you communicate differently, an environment that maybe inspires you to think of something differently, move differently, makes you in a way learn differently, feel differently. So today I would like to talk to you about play, but I also would like to talk to you about learning, because I think that play and learning are connected. In a way, they come from the same place. They come from what I call our natural born curiosity. I mean, our playfulness, if you want to, is this fantastic instrument we are born with. It's our natural born DNA for learning. And it comes from the same spot. It comes from our curiosity. And it's this curiosity, this natural born curiosity, that what I call, these are the different steps of the pedagogy of play, but it's also a pedagogy of learning, and they're connected because our natural born curiosity leads us to wonder. And when we start wondering, we start to explore, interact with the thing we're wondering about. And when we explore, we connect to what we discover. And then discovering it, we start to relate it to what we already knew. For example, it's like, this tastes sort of like chicken, or this is almost like an airplane. And then we start to relate to it. So we relate it to something we already knew, but we can see it's something new. And then we start to create. So from curiosity to wonder, to explore, to connect with it, transforming, almost incorporating it into our universe, and then using it proactively to maybe create a new dish or a new universe, who knows? So this is what I call, the different steps of play. And it's the same with learning. Learning comes also from this natural born curiosity. So what you're looking at right now is a very, in my case, I'm a mom, so that I'm very touched looking at this photo because these are my two boys. But this little boy on the left side is Milan. And right now he's actually playing basketball, and he's almost what we call meters, 2 meters high, meaning he's very tall, big man today. But here they're still cute and they're small and they're interacting. These two brothers, they are kind of discovering, they were curious, they're like, oh, what is this? They're investigating and so on. And while doing so, yes, they learn, but they're also just doing it on their own proper wish to do so, and they're playing. And this is why I actually, with my company, because why do we focus with our studio on what we call environments that enhance the human development potential? And why do we call it play? It's because I got so frustrated because of my own kids when they start to go to school that they sort of became uninterested in exploring their own creative, playful potential. They start to come home and talk about, oh, I don't want to do that because I'm not at school. And it's like kind of school started to treat them or unlearn them actually how to learn, taking away the pleasure, the joy of playing and learning, which are one. And why is that? Well, school is actually not about learning, because schools are, first of all, a system of control. They're buildings, they're architecture of control, controlling one adult with one group of young people in one room doing one thing. They're not about actually thinking what learning is about. One of them is that when you go to school, learning is compulsory. It doesn't have this sense of free will. When you play, there's always the choice, the element of choice. Do you go to the right or do you go to the left? Second, schools are actually very good in creating very boring environments, and actually they're about boredom, and you're trying to kind of stand it. Look at this boy, he's hanging in his chair there and he's just kind of trying to endure it. Yeah. And then the last part of school, which is also all against learning, it's about fear. If you are not doing well enough, if you don't have the right answer, if you don't have the right grade, oh, you'll never succeed in life. All these elements, boredom, fear, and the compulsory part, actually make you learn less. So in a way, schools are not about learning. So for me, having my children going to school, seeing how their creativity in a way was taken away from them, their natural born wish to play and learn, I realized that I had to bring play to school in order to enhance learning, not only for my own kids, but for all children. So, yeah. And why is this so important? Now, today, it's a bit easier to talk about these things after we all have lived quite some months now in this horrible pandemic. We need people with creative mindsets. We need people that are able to think new thoughts that can play. So, why did I put on why? It's because I always wonder, why haven't we actually already done this? Why haven't we already changed our schools? Why haven't we acknowledged the fact that learning is playing, and then started to think about how do we incorporate this as a natural part of our educational learning system? Well, the reason is that we have a lot of arguments. Why not? Yeah. Every time I work with schools or governments or municipalities, we work all over the world. So we've been in all cultures, from Latin America to China to the south, the north of Europe, and so forth. Then they always have all these arguments. Why not? It's like, yes, but the teachers first need to understand, how this. Oh, we can't do this. It's too expensive. Oh, we cannot do this because, and so on. We always have all these arguments. Why not? But the reason, I mean, somehow for me personally, I think it's it's a lot of bullshit, because playing, and each child plays, there's no reason why you should not do so. Anyway, so today I would like to tell you a little bit the system we work with and to share this with you. First of all, we work in a holistic way. So we combine the design of the spaces with the pedagogy, the methodologies of schools and their organization. And by doing so, we give them a tool, a reason, a way of transforming their culture, not a free fall. Because if not, people always say that play is not for fun, school. And we say, oh no, it's not, but we make you play. So anyway, here's the system. We have 6 key principles, And they're all about, in a way, physical environment, how you as a person act and interact with other people in different learning settings. And they're all metaphors and they all cover different physical situations, but they also cover different learning situations. So this system allows us to actually plan spaces in a different way and therefore create differentiated landscapes. So the first one we call the mountaintop. Mountaintop situations, they're all about one-way traffic of communication, meaning I speak to a big group, or I'm a student and I present something for my pals. The second one we call the cave, and this is about focusing, about having environments that allow you to sense how you focus in different situations. Then the third one we call the campfire. Campfire is about, having different ways of working and collaborating with each other. This can be because you are sitting in a room inside a room. This can be because we have pulled a group of tables together, flexible in a corner, and we created our own little environment. A campfire situation is about, creating the sense of being a group and kind of being alone inside of your group. So your group is separated from everything else that happens in the space. Then the fourth key we call watering hole. Watering hole is about informal knowledge exchange. These are the points in a building or in a flow where people bump into each other, and therefore they hear something that somebody else says, or they see something somebody else shows and shares. Now, these are this kind of creative hotpots where rumors run through a building, or suddenly everybody is so much into, I don't know, red clothes. And then the fifth one we call the hands-on, and they are environments where you don't only learn with your brain because you listen or you read or you see, but you actually learn also trying it out. You incorporate learning. Now, these environments, of course, need to be equipped for this. So they're small. There's a lot of materials. You can wash your hands and so on and so forth. And then the last one we call movement. And movement is actually about moving your body in order to activate your brain and becoming aware of that. Meaning that you actually have environments where children start to be able to sense their own body and feel that, hey, I actually need to move in order to focus, to keep my attention, or because I just feel like, I don't know, dancing. I think one of the problems is that we don't create an awareness. We don't learn how to feel, inside ourselves, what kind of situations we need. So by creating this 6 different typologies of spaces and doing a space planning with that, we in a way create an algorithm of spaces, allowing children in schools to feel what they need, what kind of cave or focus situations they need for doing this specific task, or in another moment, what kind of environment creates the best possible team situation for this particular group of children. So in that sense, we allow them with this kind of algorithm of spaces, we allow children for learning, actually we empower them to create an awareness on how they learn best. Now, this is really important because everybody talks today, when we talk about education, talks about 21st century skills. They say we don't know 65% of all children that starts in primary school today will have a job that doesn't exist. How do we prepare these children for the future? Well, we prepare them best for the future by learning them how to learn. And how do you learn in the best possible way? Well, when you're active, not when you're passive receiving knowledge. No, when you're active, trying it out, experimenting, and learning that way. So therefore, this 6 principles actually turn the whole perspective of a school or a learning environment around, because it goes from being passive where somebody else decides what you do and when you do it, to an environment where you're active and you decide where you learn and what you need at which time. Now, the interesting part of this, we have worked with this for many years already. This is not something new. I'm just starting to build up. We are going a far way through all our different learning and playful learning environments. So the interesting thing is, of course, by already having done many of these schools this way, was that when actually COVID hit us, the pandemic, and all schools, they closed down, we saw schools that had these principles. They had a much bigger ease to move into a digital context because their students were aware about how they learn in different situations. And they could combine the digital with the physical needs. And they could kind of reflect what they were doing also in a more home environment and figure out how they could enhance their learning, or also were more aware about what they were actually missing. Because the whole thing is that this digital, like right now I'm presenting, it's very hard for me because I can't see you, I can't sense you. I mean, and we're actually kind of, talking to each other through a little loop, a little hole. This is a digital communication where we lack all the sensory communication we normally do as humans in between each other. And this awareness, what do I need and what do I not need, is the first step into learning. Now, what happens in the evolution of schools and kind of education is a little bit what you see on this this diagram, that we, first we had set in rows, and then we started to kind of move into a group one, and then some schools, they started to be a bit more innovative, and then inside of the classroom started to differentiate. Now, what we then started to see is the creation of what we call learning environments. So you go from, as you see on the left side, like classrooms around a corridor, to what you see on the right side, this kind of learning environments, which are much more differentiated, where students rotate and have a more proactive, empowering way of moving. Now, this is a real environment in Copenhagen, so I'm just going to show it to you because it's a nice test how a traditional school transformed into something else. And it's also important to say that this is a public school, not a private school, to give you a bit of context that this is not only for the few and happy. So here we see this before photo. This is in Copenhagen, a traditional, actually quite ordinary, not specially nice school at all, not specially bad neither. And this is afterwards, exactly the same room. What we see is an environment that speaks to you in an entirely different way. This is what design can do. Sometimes people say that, you're a designer, and what does it mean? I mean, as a designer, no, the objective of your work is not design. The objective of your work is make people change their behavior, think different, and so on and so forth. But you are a master of seduction. You seduce with color and shape. So what happens here is that these students, when they arrive at school, it's a totally different world. It speaks to them in a different way. When they have to collaborate and work together, they have to think about where do we sit, how do we sit, and almost not only in a conscious way, but also in an intuitive and unconscious way, they not only change their body position, the way they work together, they also change their way of thinking about their collaborative activities. So here we go a little bit through this environment. I mean, there are a lot of different ways of sitting, of being together, and this is extremely important. There's an element of choice. One of the key pillars of the pedagogy of play is that you have the element of choice. You choose where to sit. You always have an element of choice. When you have a compulsory context, it's almost impossible to play. You can't force a child to play. Now, I have a little movie from this particular school. Now, they speak Danish in this movie, and I don't expect you to speak Danish, so I've put on English subtitles. It's just shortly an interview. We can hear some of the teachers speak and the students. It's only 2 minutes, and I would like to share it with you. Just a moment. I have to stop sharing my screen and reshare it because I think I forgot to hit the button share sound of the video. So just bear with me for 1 second. Technologies. I'm so sorry about that. That was the one thing I thought I had to do. Share. There we go. And enjoy.
Praksisforsøget er en afprøvning af anderledes arbejdsformer, anderledes rammer, som skal styrke eleverne på en ukendt fremtid. Det, som vi gerne vil styrke eleverne i, det er rigtig meget deres samarbejdskompetencer, deres undersøgende kompetencer, det at kunne indgå i et fællesskab om at finde løsninger. Og for at kunne understøtte det, så har vi lavet nogle rammer, der inviterer til samarbejde, der inviterer til at arbejde på andre måder, end når man sidder i det traditionelle klasselokale. Så ved at rive væggene ned, vil I tage de gamle møbler ud og erstatte dem med nogle andre møbler. En helt anden indretning, som inviterer til samarbejdet. Så fik lærerne de rammer, som gav mening i forhold til den måde, de gerne vil arbejde på, i forhold til at skabe den undervisning, som er motiverende for eleverne.
65% af de jobs, som de her børn skal have, de findes ikke endnu. Hvordan pokker kan man hjælpe dem til det? Det ved vi ikke, men vi ved i hvert fald, at det, som de formentlig skal kunne, det er at kunne være gode til at samarbejde, de skal være gode til at præsentere, de skal være gode til at være kildekritiske. Så det kan vi ligesom lægge ind. Og der, hvor lokalet ligesom kommer ind i forhold til, til det her, det er jo, at det tilgodeser elevernes læringsmåder eller læringsstile. Og det er altså virkelig prikken over i'et, fordi det kan den almindelige folkeskole ikke. Sådan som vi planlægger vores undervisning, så tager vi altid udgangspunkt i, hvordan eleven ser sig selv i denne her verden, og hvordan eleven møder det omkringliggende samfund. Og det i sig selv kræver jo en enorm kompleks didaktik i virkeligheden, og en enorm kompleks tilrettelæggelse af undervisning.
Al cine al 300
Det, som vi lægger op til, det er til
o los católicos
i virkelige problemer og arbejde projektorienteret,
está lo otro, como es,
samtidig med, at vi inddrager
que ahí también atienden por
samfundet så meget som vi
idioma.
overhovedet kan. Og
La
det
casa
kræver jo
antigua, la
virkelig
ver,
enormt meget af
la,
eleverne. Og det, at de kan arbejde på de måder, som de gerne vil, og de kan sidde eller ligge på den måde, som de gerne vil, det understøtter enormt meget den didaktik, som de gerne vil udføre.
Yes. Well, this was the public Budding school in Copenhagen, and I hope you enjoyed a short movie where you could see the kids move around and the teacher speak. Now, this was actually about what I tried to start with, that this was not compulsory. There's always an element of choice. If you want to have a good designing for playfulness, the first thing is that you have to create this element of choice. The next thing I would like to talk to you about is about what I call independence now, or autonomy. I mean, if children need to experiment, they need to roam, they need to challenge their boundaries. But the boundaries, of course, of a 3-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 12-year-old or an 18-year-old are not the same. The older a student gets, the further they will go and discover the world. Now, also, one side, you need to have, this kind of possibility to challenge your boundaries and discover. On the other side, you also need, as a child, to feel safe and protected, not overprotected, mind you, because that's also not the best possible environment for enhancing your development. But so there's a kind of an element of, ooh, this is exciting. Can I climb in that tree? So you try to challenge yourself, but of course, when you fall out, maybe it bumps and it hurts, but you don't die. Yes. So you always have to have this kind of element of being able to challenge your boundaries, but in a safe environment. So you feel free to enhance your experimentation. Now, this element, what I call the autonomy ingredient, we worked with in the St. Andrew's Scott School in Buenos Aires in Argentina. And I would like to share it with you now that you actually choose one of the photos for the announcement of this presentation. Now, the funny thing is, when I came there and to start to work with that school, they were very proud of their school and of the history and being a Scottish school. But we are in Buenos Aires, we are in Latin America, and everybody speaks Spanish. But the day I arrived, they had a party and they were kind of dancing around in this kind of Scottish small dresses. And, they realized for me, that was kind of a funny realized that this culture they brought from a long way back, this history, was important for them. So we used it for our storytelling. We used it to kind of connect their past to the present and help them to develop into a future, and to actually kind of put a word on what we call this autonomy ingredient. Now, bear with me, I'll tell you the story. First of all, we are in Scotland. Now, Scotland has what we call lowlands and has highlands. And we took inspiration of this landscape. So we translated it a little bit into a way of creating a overall space planning of the school. We said, okay, the smallest students, they live either in a house, casa, or in a village, pueblo. And then from this village in the lowlands, they have access to the beach. But then when they get older, they move into the highlands, and there they live actually surrounding a lake, and they go from castle to castle, castillo to castillo. And when they are going to secondary school, well, they're getting really big, like almost like real Vikings, and they're sailing from island to island on the big sea. Now, we use this storytelling, we actually literally put it into the environment. So here we have one of the lakes and the surrounding of the lakes. And I have a little other movie to you that explains a little bit this autonomy ingredient and how we incorporated it into the school environment. And I'm going to share it with you now.
The Highlands in St Andrews Scots School are a learning landscape where students develop their autonomy and independence. The students' territory gradually grows with them in their learning adventure in the Highlands. From year 3, where they become inhabitants of the lake, an open shared space, they can freely visit the surrounding castles. In secondary school, the students move on to the Big Sea, where they go from island to island, gaining new knowledge. Starting in year 3, when they move to the shared territory of the lake, they explore the castles belonging to their own wing. When they move on to year 5 and year 6, they belong to one big, shared lake that fills the entire floor. The castles on each side of the building wings complement each other, enhancing the movement of the students from one wing to the other one. What does a day in the Highlands Lake look like for students in year 5 and 6? Marta and Juan study at St Andrews Scots Schools. Marta goes to year 5.
Hola, soy Marta.
She would love to be an international correspondent and play rugby in her spare time. Juan is from year 6.
Hola, soy Juan.
He wants to be a doctor in Argentina and support the national football team. As Marta and Juan are neighbors, they take the school bus together. Now, their adventure exploring the many castles of the lake can start. Marta and her group gather with their teacher, who tells them the program and objectives of the day. At the other wing of the building, Juan is also with his group and teacher for their morning assembling. Juan experiments hands-on with his peers with their first prototypes of foldable houses. Marta shoots a news feature about nutrition. We are what we eat. Through research and debate, Juan and his fellow students are challenging the housing in their town. Marta and her peers share their conclusion on nutrition in the forest. Juan prepares on his own a presentation of the folding house project. Marta and Juan meet up in a shared activity for year 5 and year 6. Marta and her peers watch their news feature on nutrition and debate their findings and insights with the rest of the group.
Are you just listening?
On a daily basis, the differentiated spaces can be used and sequentially combined in many ways, which develops a new educational culture in the learning landscape. The objective of the students' trip through the Highlands is to learn how to learn independently. In this way, students can actively develop their creativity and intelligence. Welcome to the 21st century learning environments. Welcome to St Andrews Scots School.
Yes. So I hope you can hear, the voiceover of the little movies. If not, it's obviously a bit boring to see. So I hope, this is when you're talking into your computer. But this little movie, we made it at the time when we were designing this school to actually explain to both the parents and the teachers how this different environment, actually works. So we use this inspiration of the Highlands and the Lowlands and the whole storytelling to make this come true. So here I have some photos of the final result. Please mute your microphone, everybody listening in. Thank you. So here we are actually looking at the result. And as you can see, what we said it was going to look, it actually looked. So here we have a small volcanic island where the kids are working on. They have what we call Nessie as a collective space where you can have like a small agora if you want to. We have reading tubes in the walls. We have collective spaces. I mean, in a way, these areas, what we call the around the lakes, yeah, the castles around the lakes, allow for differentiated learning environments inspired by the storytelling of the Scottish landscape with the highlands and the lowlands. But not only that, they also kind of tell a story that, you know, there's so many different ways of doing it. You know, I mean, there's so many different senses you can you can get influence in so many different ways. So it also stimulates children in different way. And I know that people come in and out of this talk, so you haven't all seen the beginning. But as I said in the beginning, when you have the different sequentials of, you know, the pedagogy of play, when you go from curiosity to wonder to explore to then, you know, connect and transform and create. And when you have this all these experiences you get in, and you're kind of connected to what you already know. Now, if you have passed your entire childhood in a white classroom with no stimuli, yeah, you don't have as much as connected to as when you have actually grown up in an environment with different colors and different shapes and different things where you can interact with, and things that are soft and hard. I mean, in a way, when you stimulate your senses, both physically because you move in different ways, but also in the possibilities of interaction, you have a much bigger vocabulary, one could say, not only in words and in, you know, images, but also in movement and interaction. And then, of course, you can learn, you enhance your learning through playful access. So here we are in this school. And as I said earlier, you know, it's like a lot of the design kind of, you know, almost invites you, you know, this little boy's like, wow, you know, he wants to look in, he wants to go through, he wants to climb, he wants to jump. I mean, there are many different ways of interacting with the design we do. And we focus a lot on actually the interaction of your body with the environments in different ways. Because I believe, and it's quite interesting to read on that how our movement of our body actually impacts our thinking patterns. If you change the way you move your body, you actually also change the way you think. And the things you can imagine change. So when we talk about stimulating our creativity, it's very much related to the physical surrounding we are exposed to, especially when we grow up. And the more options you have, the richer vocabulary in shape, in color, in smell, in sound, in action, the richer, the more things you can learn. So when you're designing playful environments, yes, then, oh yeah, sorry, before I go further, there was one white paper I would really actually like to tell you about and go and read it. It's not that new anymore, it's from 2017, but it's free to download on the website of the Lego Foundation. You can go there, and this is why, and it's super interesting. And it actually says, why is play connected to learning? And in what way? How does it work? And it says, well, play is always joyful, it's meaningful, it's actively engaging, it's actively engaging, it's socially interactive, and it's iterative. And these 5 elements, in a way, make that play is actually the best learning tool we have available. So just imagine, you know, what is a playful learning environment? Well, first of all, a playful learning environment enhances active learning. There are all these different things you can try out. I made a spelling mistake here, I can see. It also promotes social interaction and collaboration. Actually, when we interact with other people and where we're stimulated to collaborate, it makes us actually happy and feel good. When you join, you make a team, and you therefore build something bigger, better, more, deeper, it's actually very giving. Now, also, a playful learning environment actually should make you feel safe. You should be able to step out of the big social, you know, kind of hot pot in the middle. This is a mistake a lot of school or children, a lot of environments do, that they create this kind of very active social environments, and it's very good to be together, but you also sometimes need to step out, and some people need to step out a bit more often. Create a differentiating environment that allows for this kind of graduating of being part of the group and also step out of the group. When you feel safe, yeah, you learn at your best possible way. Now, a playful learning environment should also create a sense of belonging. You can do this in different ways because you can interact, you can build it, you can actually do and impact the design, but it's also because you can choose where to be. And that gives you a sense of belonging because you can actually act. And it should, of course, stimulate your curiosity in many different ways. And motivate for experimentation. Give you the option to build, to hang something, to exhibit something, to change it, to move it around. And then there's this thing related to curiosity that we would like to, a playful learning environment would like to make you discover the unexpected and awaken your imagination. And then last but not least, it should also give you flexibility. Now, I like this photo a lot because what we see is a rather traditional learning situation, but at the same time, one moment later, it can be totally different. And this flexibility is actually what I would like to see in all learning environments and schools. Instead of thinking in, typical classrooms, because we have to sometimes sit in a group and therefore everything has to be that way, why not create this kind of flexible environment? Not because everything can move, no, a flexible environment because we can move. Because the most flexible thing in a room is not the chair, it's actually us, which is even more flexible than a chair. So therefore, I would just like to use a couple of words on flexibility, given that this is a design lecture and about designing. A lot of our projects, people ask us and they say, oh yeah, the future 21st century skills, playfulness, etc. We need everything to be flexible. We need glass walls so we can look through everything. We need sliding doors so we can open up everything. All walls should be able to open. And does that create flexibility? Actually, not necessarily. I mean, real flexibility is in our mind. If you learn French, always sitting in the same room, you are perfect at speaking French in exactly the same classroom. But when I put you at a market or a small cafe in Paris, you are not able to order a coffee. So what creates an agile and flexible mindset for speaking French, being in a lot of different situations, doing French? Now, so we believe that you can enhance not only your vocabulary for this connection with the pedagogy of play, but also we can enhance actually, your learning potential by giving you the options, all these different typologies of spaces. So flexibility is actually about diversity. Of course, some of these places are, of course, and also very flexible and can be rebuilt and rescheduled and with sliding doors and have glass walls, but not everything. So some of the spaces are very specific. This is a small space. It's dark. It has a little lamp. That means that the children that are sitting there, they have chosen to be there because this is a place they would like to be. This gives them the freedom of choice, which is one of a key element of actually a condition for play and learning. And it gives them a diversity because next to it are open, very flexible spaces. So this is a space where these guys, they actually build it themselves and they can change the environment and they're allowed to do so. Not everywhere in the entire school, no, certain areas. And then, of course, this diversity and flexibility is also made by using different materials, having spaces which are very light and very wide and very neutral. I mean, I do live in Scandinavia, so we do have this like very kind of Scandinavian kind of touch and feel where the big spaces are light and wide and we think about the daylight, but then it's combined with colors, it's combined with things to move, it's combined with things that are not moved and fixed, it's combined with materials and textures. So it's about diversity. And I think this is also in a way about a kind of a way of thinking of us as human beings. We are all different and we all learn in different ways. And when you come into an environment which kind of offers you this kind of diversity, you feel respected because there's also a space for you. And it's okay that I need to be a little bit more in quiet spaces while you are a bit more wild and you run around and you're always building things. That's okay because we are different. We learn in different ways. So this diversity not only creates a more flexible mindset, it also makes you feel more respected in all the different ways we are. It's much more inclusive. Now, a playful experience, a last part I would like to talk about, is about how the landscape can be inspiring as well. So what we are looking at is a little plan drawing of a library in Billund. Billund, you probably don't know where this is, but this is the city where Lego comes from. Lego are the small bricks, and everybody here has grown up with this. So for us, Lego is like, it's like kind of a part of your, I don't know, your upbringing. So the city of Lego is called Billund. This is where still the headquarters of Lego are. And they call themselves the capital of children, and they have a library. And the library, which we designed, is the public library, is a library made as a landscape. And instead of making a library for adults, they said, let's make a library for children where adults also are allowed to be or can play as well. So this is where you enter the library. And when you go into the library, you have this way up on top of the volcano. So on it, you have sound effects and different exhibitions. So children can choose to run over the volcano, or you can take the left side into the more traditional one. And then you can walk into the desert area with, a termite tower, and where you can actually run on or walk on the bookshelves. It's all very interactive, again, having a very kind of a different physical interaction with the body and your way of moving. And then here we are in the rice paddies, which is also a small theater and a place where you can, do storytelling. We have another part, which we call the volcano, where we have, no, not the volcano, sorry, the lava seating. So lava lounges, which has this kind of red touch and feel, where we can see this girl here. And this is a little group. They're sitting in the water gobble, where we have in the sea area, where you kind of can sit in the water gobble, and you can actually have storytelling coming from some speakers in the ceiling. This is actually the maker space of the library, the photo we've seen before. And then for the people of us that are a bit more boring, or mom and dad, they can sit here at a normal table, normal chair, if they can't stand it. Now, what I tried to show you with this landscape is that, you can just go to the library and pick up a book, but you can also have been, on a volcano, traveling through the desert, over the rice paddies, went through the sea on your way out. You can have an adventure. And this is what I'm trying to say, that, please, let's play a little bit more. It's so much more fun, because it makes us not only, imagine maybe things we couldn't imagine or haven't been thinking of. It also makes our life so much more rewarding. So last and not least, very short, about a hospital. Now, we worked with, it's a university, children's university hospital, which is about to be built here in Copenhagen. It's under its way. And it's a hospital where, quite special actually, they decided to incorporate play as a part of the building and the hospital and the treatment. Why is that? Because for a lot of, this is the rendering from the architecture competition. It's not built yet, so this is not a photo, it's a rendering, but it will look this way. A bike passed by the site every day, and they're just starting digging. Now, the whole story behind this hospital, which in Danish is called Børneriget, means the kingdom of children, one can say, it's a bit badly translated, is that it incorporates play in its building and its treatment and everything. And that is because when children stop playing and when they stop learning, they actually often also stop getting better. So what did I see? When children give up to play, their immune system collapses. So in order to, in a way, make children faster, better, and in order to give them a better experience being in a children's hospital, they decided to integrate play in the building. Now, the hospital in itself is being shaped by the architects as 2 hands with 5 fingers. And then what we did is that we created a matrix on how to incorporate play inside of the hospital. So instead of doing it like an add-on while having like small play areas, we decided to integrate it into the building, into the treatment, and think of play as a way to actually be in the hospital when you're a child. Now, in order to do so, and this is where it becomes interesting for all of you that are listening here, we started to look at play itself and the different categories of play. And then we started to look at the hospital and the different, what we call parameters of the hospital, the way you experience, and you will be at the hospital and combine the two and make a kind of a matrix, a system, and how to integrate play into the hospital. So first, a little bit on these 5 categories of play. There are 5 basically, and they're often, of course, experienced in a combination. The 5 categories of play. The first one are physical games, where you actually, use your body, and that way you play and you learn. The second one is that you do games with objects. Yeah, you have, you have a little flying, a little plane, and you're almost, you're on your way flying to another continent. You don't need to actually board this plane for real. Or you're playing with a doll, or you project all kinds of things in these objects you play with. Then we have creative games, when you actually create. You create music, you create drawings, you build with Lego. Then we have role games, where we kind of train our empathy or our imagination, imagining that we are a police officer or a nurse or a clown or Batman. And then we have games with rules, which are games where we have a strict set of rules. Like, okay, when I'm standing here, I'm safe, but when I step over this line, it's poisonous. Or, like chess, we have a very clear set of rules, or League of Legends or whatever. All this set of rules that actually train us to work in all these different and live in different constellations. Now, these 5 categories of play often, of course, are experienced in different ways. Now, what did we do in the hospital in order to be able to integrate play integrated into the hospital in all its way? We started to look at the different ways you, in a way, use or consume, if you want, the hospital. Either we call them the different parameters, and connect them to the different categories. For example, time. Children are in the hospital in very different ways. Some are chronically ill, so they come there every time again, and it's every time the same. So here, the different categories of play should actually create the variation. Now, there's also a whole different experience of time. Certainly, time becomes very short or very long. And when you, for example, have cancer treatment, you can be having this kind of very long waiting, and in the same time, it's very creating a lot of anxiety, makes you feel bad. Then there are the different treatments. Use play to actually ease your treatments or during treatment. Then there is the different social context, the different working with the different senses, and so on. Now, this kind of created a compass on how to actually use play integrated into the hospital. Because when children actually stop playing, they actually stop getting better. So the more they play, it's actually a treatment. The bigger chance of recovery it is for children, or at least a bigger chance for feeling good. Now, this was my last example of a clear, kind of playful environment. Now, I just want to say something very important. Why is play so important? And why is play learning? Because they're about us being human, and they're about being motivated. You can't force a child to play. Yeah, you can actually also, not really, or a very ineffective way of learning at least, force somebody to learn. When you play, you learn so much faster. So if we incorporate a playful aspect into a learning aspect, we can see children racing towards whatever they need to learn. And then there's this one thing that is so important about play. That is that play is actually really fun. It's motivating. And motivation comes actually from inside. And for example, just imagine if nobody would have ever imagined flying to the moon, we would never actually have been able to do so. So this imagination, this playfulness is our main force as human beings to be able to actually change our world. We have a lot to change. So, last but not least, I would like to, we were just before the talk, I was just chatting a little bit. I was saying, what would you do if you would be at home right now? I said, well, I will be finishing my book because I have to finish it by the end of the week because it has to go to the printer. And that's the book on the right side, Play to Learn, Designing for Uncertainty, where I try to kind of collect what I've been doing last 10 years and how that relates to playful learning environments and so on. So the other book on the left side, Designing for a Better World, starts at school, which tells about the 6 principles and how to work with them proactively, is a book which has already been published. And for the listeners to this event, if you send me an email there, I sent you the digital version of the Designing for a Better World starts at school book, because if you promise me that you will use it and start thinking of how can you change some little thing in your surrounding to create a more playful environment for yourself or somebody else you know. And then the other one, Play to Learn, Designing for Uncertainty, unfortunately will be officially launched here in June. So there you will just have to sign up to our website or something like that and to keep track of our news. And then you have to you can order it when the time comes. You can sign up to the publication of the book, but it's not there yet. Well, thank you so very much for listening to me. And then now is the time that people can start asking me questions. And I believe Susan is gonna administrate.
I'm here. Yeah, hi guys. Okay, kids, we've got quite a few people who are still with us, and I really, really appreciate that. If in fact you'd have any questions to ask of Rosan, I'd love to invite you to put those into the chat box, and we can kind of review some of those. And I just wanted to let you know, Rosan, I had someone who's commented all the way from Lebanon. So you've had a really bunch of interested audience, and some people have also mentioned that they consider what you're doing for children as well as a correlation to relating to horticultural therapy. So I think everything grows with go ahead. Sorry, you were going to throw something at us.
Yeah, I was just thinking, that I always think it's important for everybody who's listening right now to ask yourself, when was the last time you played? Just a question, just think about it. When was the last time you actually played? Because it's not only children that play, we adults play just as well. And I think that sometimes we forget that, we forget this playfulness, we forget to play. So it's a question I ask myself actually regularly.
I've already got a few questions to roll through, and I want to move forward. One question from Garrett Bertner. He's asking how all the wonderful furnitures and fixtures are built or selected. Are they custom or off the shelf? I bet there's a combo for your schools.
Exactly. Yeah. The truth is there are combo in many cases. I mean, and sometimes we, there are different ways of doing it. We also, often co-design together with the kids of the schools. We have a lot of integrated kind of what we call user involvement and things like that. And then we try to build things using often for as much as possible local people that build the different environments, and then together with them you also adapt and tweak things. The funny thing is there's an interesting thing to say about off the shelf and specific fixtures or special designs made. Sometimes in certain countries off the shelf is cheaper than fixtures and special design, but in other places it's the other way around. So it's not always that because it's special design it's necessarily more expensive than when it's off the shelf. It depends a little bit on which part of the world you are. That's actually quite interesting perspective. For example, in India, it would actually be cheaper for us to work with local people designing their school with things we actually developed with them locally, design them locally, than when we would buy off the shelf products, which often come and at a much higher price.
Oh, thank you. I have a question here. It says from Eric, how do these design concepts work for autistic children?
That's a very interesting question. Now, there are lots of different ways of autism. That's the first thing. But first of all, I would like to say that because we also did once a design for a special school where children with very severe autism, and that's a bit different. There are different spectra of autism. That's the first thing I want to say. The first thing, I think that often it works actually quite well. Why is that? Because the schools we design are very differentiated. So for example, there are small spaces that children can book or even get assigned, which is their spot. So there's this kind of space for this diversity. It also allows for children, it allows actually for, more different ways of being and learning. So there's a more space for being different, and so also more space for autistic children. Now, it depends a little bit. That's why I'm kind of reluctant, because there are also some autistic children that need very strict, kind of repetitive, for example, routines and stuff like that. And then if a school has a very changing kind of ways of working and with a lot of movement, then for these children that can be difficult for them to kind of live, and they cannot function in an environment like that. So in that sense, it's not all, there's not one way fits all. But in general, it's been our experience. The first of all, we did the Vitra Telefonplan in Sweden school, which is many, many years ago. We had this kind of a small different types of rooms you could book or you could go into. And then there were some children that were just assigned some of these. So they had their own little space they could go to, and that allowed them to actually function in a much better way, much more inclusive way in the big group. And the Boarding School example I showed in the beginning of my talk, one of the boys there, which was part of our little design group, which we worked together with, designing the environment, had a light form of autism, and he told me in the beginning that he was against it. He didn't like this. And then when because before there were 4 classes, and then they moved together, and there were like 120 kids sharing this area. And then after the design, we spoke together, and he actually liked it very much, especially, as he said, some things were difficult for him, but he said he especially liked it because he felt so much more part of a group, and he had much easier of creating some relations. So it depends. That's short. There's not one.
To your point, that first school you showed us in the example had the video. It was an existing school. You redesigned the interior, correct?
Yes, it's actually a school. It's part of a program. It's a municipality that has a whole series of schools that should be transformed. So they actually did this specific project as a kind of to generate experiences on the conclusion how to act on all the other schools they had to transform. So it was actually the first one in a series. That's why it was very closely monitored by a whole bunch of people on the emotional and the psychological and the pedagogical and the results and stuff like that. So it has been a project which has been very closely monitored because it had to be implemented in a big scale afterwards.
So was there a clear difference? Were they able to monitor or grade, for lack of a word, better test scores? Were they able to say these kids then suddenly had better learning? Were they able to look at that?
Yes, they did, and that is exactly, especially and there's also a difference in between the short and the long term, of course. On the most significant was the motivation. And with motivation, the effect of the higher motivation of they're teenagers, higher motivation. The kids there are like in between 13 and 15, 16. It's like what you call, I think in the United States, you call that
junior high.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. You have a different system, but they were in this age, and they were actually very demotivated. Normally in the school, it's not the best of neighborhoods and stuff like that, and anyways. So they had a much higher motivation. They also had higher grades as effect of that. And the teachers in the beginning, some of the teachers, they were very much against it, I have to say. Some of them, not all of them. Some of the teachers were very much against it, and then they became the biggest fans, And then there were some of them that had a hard time. And there are also some that actually quit because they found it so hard to function, while there are other young teachers that actually start to work there because of the project. So they're kind of different results. But the psychological effect was the most significant, that the children just simply much more happy. Which I think is quite important.
Who couldn't love being in those rooms? I want to be there. Let's see, I've got another couple questions. I haven't seen any focus on outdoor environment. Do you incorporate the outdoors playground into the design? Is it considered as an extension of the classroom, outdoor classroom, or nature can be part of main component?
Yes, it's a very good question, because it's true. I didn't really incorporate it in my talk today. I sometimes have a hard time in showing everything, but I think the outdoor environment is extremely important. I think the outdoor environment should be connected to the indoor. It depends, of course, very much of the climate and where you are in the world. But when possible, you should be outside as much as possible, and actually should have a, kind of, also depends if you're in the middle of a big city or you're on the countryside, stuff like that. But if possible, I really believe that we should incorporate the outside as much as possible, because it makes us simply move more. And right now we are actually doing some very big projects with very integrated landscape projects, where the inside and the outdoor are very kind of, blurring. We're blurring the lines a little bit in between the indoor and the outdoor. And one of the things I think often is actually quite bad is this idea of, they call it in Spanish recreo, or like the break time. It's like all the kids are inside, and then it's like freedom, and then you have like 10 minutes, and all they're outside, and then outside becomes your 10 minutes of freedom, when you can just run around, and then you have to go inside, and then you go into this, in this, if you look at the people from a side in a little chair kind of, and you're going, captured in your movement. So for a lot of the things we work with, the outside is connected, being allowed to freely move your body around, to interact, to actually like not being part of the group, that to not, find a little corner for yourself because you feel like it, or engage with the group, in a much more free way. In a way, it's like, schools are designed to control our movement, and to control our, what we call the element of choice, to make you not choose. I choose for you, sit there in that room from 9 to 10 doing this thing, German, because I've decided that now you have to learn, or you probably don't read German at school. You have to learn German. It's very hard. You have to learn German or French or mathematics or whatever it is, And that's the total opposite thing of, it's not because you don't want to learn German. Maybe you think it's very exciting to learn German. Maybe somebody does, I don't know. And but that's not the right way to make you actually learn. It's like force eating. Yeah, you're force eating children with learning. It's the opposite way. If you have an environment that stimulates you to learn a playful, it comes all natural. You think it's great fun to do German verbs, but you have to do it in the right way. And the first thing you do is that you give people the element of choice. And if you need to move, you go move, instead of disciplining them, kind of to endure, not to move your body, because that's actually what we do. So I think that the exterior is extremely important, and it's extremely important to break this boundary in between the interior and the exterior, because of movement, but also because when you're outside, don't we all want to be part of nature? We all have this, like, when we see a beautiful tree, we feel, so that's the next part, that we actually need to be in contact with nature, and it makes us so much more, happy. So that's another whole different story, our need for having a relation with nature.
I've got a few more questions. You still up for it? Because I know it's late.
Sure, go. It's all right. Now
Okay.
I'm all coffeeed up, so.
How will the COVID use of Zoom and personal technology affect future design for your future projects?
It's a very good question, actually. There's several parts of it. We just actually, it's being built right now, a school in Lima in Peru, which is kind of our first post-COVID school designed with the pandemic in mind. And one of the things is that it totally blurs with, it's kind of embracing this green area, and it has this kind of very fluid in and out connection on all elements. The first thing we've covered when it comes to the space, the physical space, I think is that we actually create an even more or bigger fluidity. I mean, like making it fluid, you know? So you actually, because as a lot of people said, like making small plastic boxes to avoid contamination was the worst thing to do. You know, we'd figure that one out. Why did well, that's at least in Europe, you know, why the rates go up so much in Madrid? Because everybody was closed inside their house. You know, what we need is not to be in small rooms together. The best thing we could do is being far away from each other in large distance, fluid spaces, having space, and being on the outside. So, for example, in Denmark, when we quite early, all kids went back to school, children were basically outside most of the time, no matter the weather. So the first thing about the post-COVID is creating the possibility to create all these different groupings, saying, okay, when there's no COVID, you can be 30, 60, then you can be small groups of 5, 2, you have all these variations. In case that is not, you know, there is a COVID situation and you need to have more distance, you can actually, you know, use all your square meters, you know, and you know, use the whole space in a differentiated way, because you can actually get far away from each other because there is this kind of flexibility. That's one thing. And then there is the other part, which is very interesting right now. We're working on this yeah, how you call it, the what we call augmented awareness of learning, because if you know how you learn, you can do it anywhere. You actually don't need to go to school. Yeah, I mean, then you can take it with you and you can create a learning environment at home, anywhere you are. So in that sense, we're looking at how can we actually facilitate this augmented learning anywhere, outside where you live, outside where you live. So this is a whole new platform where we're trying to kind of create this what we call augmented learning experience. So you actually don't need to have a specific school building, but you could learn anywhere.
Did I hear you say something about screens as well? About that?
Screens. Well, the whole thing is that the problem is, in a way, you know, I mean, I don't think it's good for anybody to look too much at a screen or a computer. And because one side, it was fantastic because we were able to communicate with each other because we had a digital connection. On the other side, so it was able to make some kind of functioning of our society. On the other side, I think we all have had this experience when you have been standing and looking at your screen all day. You know, you get this what we call Zoom fatigue, you know, because as I said earlier, it only, you know, kind of limits all our senses into a very little bit. You know, it's like, you know, it's like speaking through how you call it, a small straw. You know, it's like you limit yourself. We limit ourselves so much. It's very difficult. So there's certain things that function well digitally when we communicate, like we can coordinate things. But when we start to co-create things, we have to create a different, you know, setting. So in that sense, I think that we're all aware of the limitations it gives it. And that is actually something we learn. So we know what it can do, and we also learn what it can't do, or where it's very difficult. And this awareness and this learning we will take with us. And I think we work with it as well. Like I said, the whole idea of taking these differentiated spaces, you take them from the digital to the physical and vice versa. I mean, there's no difference. It's not like physical versus digital. We are one person. I mean, the digital and the physical became one in a way. Certain things work better in different situations. I don't know if that's right, if you understand what I am saying, but
it's made it available to us to have you from Denmark, so that is one of the positives.
For example,
yeah. I have one last question that I'm going to ask. Let's see here. It's from Elise, and she says, it seems that adults are fearful of using play as a learning tool. Here we send kids out to the playground to burn off steam. It's true, as you had said, and then the opposite of play, so we can prep them for learning. How do we get around that fear? That we're fearful of using play as a learning tool. I can't imagine that.
I think, well, yeah. I mean, then, you know, afraid of what is the question, actually. I mean, what are we afraid of? You know, I mean, what is the worst that could happen? Yeah. Now, and the answer to that for a lot of people is like, they're true. I mean, most common answers to that one, what is the worst that could happen, is that children, they don't, kind of learn enough to make it in society. Yeah. So it's like, you might not, I don't know, learn enough to, I don't really exactly know, but this is a really interesting, it's a very interesting perspective, because, for example, when I'm in a Spanish or Hispanic country, then we look at that, and then kids, they start to try to learn kids how to read and write when they're like 4 years old, basically, and they put them on small chairs in the classroom, and they try to try to sort of teach them, how to read and write. And then you are in a Scandinavian context, and then they say, no, absolutely not before you're 7 years old. Absolutely do not touch, not touch, not necessary. And then you look at 2 kids at 8-year-old, and you say, okay, we have the Spanish kids that has been doing this from since 4, and then we have the one that has been just kind of, I mean, it's very playful, and they're slowly, and they have this kind of, it's like, oh, if you feel like reading, you kind of start it, because you have this moment in your life that you are ready for it, and it comes a little bit at different ages. And then you look at these 2 kids, and then you see the one kid and the other kid, and they read just as well, sometimes even better, So what I'm saying is that I think that the fear of the playfulness is actually more harmful than being a bit more open and asking ourselves the difficult question: how do you actually learn? Yeah. So first of all, playing is not only about, it's not only about, moving and getting away with your energy. Playing is also about actually taking risks, about experimenting. It's, for kids, playing is very serious, So I think always, what are we actually afraid of? And maybe we should, kind of try to figure out, what are they, what are we really afraid of? Oh, I'm afraid my child won't learn how to read, So, okay, how do I make sure? How can I kind of follow this through? How much do I allow them to play? And when do I need to kind of check if it's actually working, So instead of blocking it out, the truth is that right now, I mean, I'm a mom. I have 2 boys now. Today they're adult, they're doing just fine. But I remember, thinking like, okay, what is the worst that can happen to my children? And I realized that the worst that can happen to my children is that when they would get out of school, they would really feel like, that's over. Now I'm never going to learn anything again in my life. I'm so happy I have done this, That's the worst attitude you want your child to have in their life. You want them to be like, wow, so exciting. Oh, I want to learn this. Oh, I would love to learn how to speak Chinese. Oh, I want to know how to cook this way. Oh, that would be so exciting to know something about international politics and economics. Oh, couldn't it be nice to know how to play basketball? I mean, come on, you want your child to have this kind of lust for life and to want to learn new things and to meet new cultures and develop and try out new things. And how do I do this? Oh, this is a new new digital reality. I mean, how do I relate to it? Having also the ability to, this, I think it's not good for me to watch Netflix 6 hours a day. How am I supposed to know that if I haven't learned children to kind of be aware of all this stuff? So I really believe that the most important thing a child should have when you get out of school is the saying, okay, I love to learn new things. I think it's great. So to be honest, what should you be afraid of? Not that they don't, not that they fit into the system. What you should be afraid of when you don't talk about playful learning is that they actually lose the joy of playing, and that they don't play anymore. That is what I think you should be afraid of. Because if you play, you keep on learning, You can learn anything.
Kids who've been through COVID and not gone to school and then not been in person with their schoolmates or teachers have really hated school or lack of school. They've been dying to go back to school. So I think there's something to that. They really need to be with peers and they need to be challenged, and they need to be in those environments.
Yeah, and when you ask children, what did you miss? What did you miss most? When you went to school, I mean, they miss the social contact. They miss being with other human beings. Being together. They don't miss sitting down and having their teacher talking like them, because they're doing that at the screen at home, watching the screen and, kind of going more and more like down. And then you have all these kids that look like this, in the morning watching their screen, and they're actually all in their pajamas, most of them. They don't even get out of that, it's very unstimulating, and it's not really very learning. They're just kind of being there, So anyway, but we were talking about play, and I think that we are human beings have this, our ability to play is what actually, and our ability to play also as adults, is actually our biggest learning tool. So if we could enhance our ability to play, we could actually enhance our ability to learn, and just as children and adults. So I'm interested in this little thing, what can I do? Also with adults, I mean, what can I do to enhance your ability to play? Because when you start playing, you start becoming creative, you start to imagine things, you start to actually opening the doors of the things that your curiosity, and you start to pursue this. And this is kind of what we call the inspirational triggers, I mean, how can I get you to play?
Well, it makes me wonder if we shouldn't start doing that with our senior citizens, people who have dementia or Alzheimer's, or places that, they're putting them into an institution, if you will, and there's nothing much for them to do.
That's part of it, but it's all also, I mean, for me, it all represents also a kind of how to say that, a way of seeing humankind, if you want, it's like an attitude to life, it's like when people say, for example, what we just came from the fear, it's a little bit as well that you say that, okay, I'm afraid of, when school becomes too playful, that my children don't learn enough. It also comes from the idea that learning is something serious, I mean, now real life starts, fun is over, you're becoming an adult, don't think that, you can enjoy your life because this is serious business. You're an adult now. And it becomes worse and worse. So by the time you're actually like old and you might even have dementia, I mean, there's zero fun left over, and space for play. It's very sad, isn't it? It's like, when you're young, you play, and the older you get, the more gray it becomes, and the less playful. I mean, what kind of attitude to life is that? You have only, as they say, the time you have left. Some songs sing about, and play is a way for us of human beings of being creative and, I don't know, travel around the world without being able to get on a plane, imagine how other people live, different ways of looking at things, seeing it from different perspective. It's about intelligence, I mean, intelligence and creativity are two sides of the same coin. And yes, of course, people should be able to play, because it's about quality of life. If you don't play, like the children in the children's hospitals, when they stop playing, they're actually afraid, because often they can see that even though all the objective things the doctors told us we had this process with the doctors of the hospital, they told us that they have, children in the cancer ward, they can see that, I mean, in a way they should actually become better, but when they stop playing, they can see that they don't, it's like when children stop playing, they die. And that's the same thing with it's a human thing. When we stop playing, we die, actually. It's our quality of life. So yes, they should definitely play.
Well, I'm gonna bring it to a close on that and say, look, we all need to play harder.
Yes, definitely.
And I so thank you for joining us. This was really, really fun. And I've got a lot of people who are excited that you've done what you've done today. So thank you, Rosan.
Well, you're welcome. It was nice to be with you, although you're so far away.
Next time you'll come.
And thank you for inviting me.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. And everyone, thank you for joining us today. And we're going to say goodbye to Denmark.
Yeah, well, thank you. And goodbye, Alaska.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.